Hey everyone, and happy Friday. It's Melissa Maker here with our 23rd Clean My Space Live. And today I'm very excited to bring on a guest, someone I haven't met before. I mean, I met him just a few minutes ago when we went live, but oftentimes when we do these live streams, I bring in my friends in the cleaning and organizing space. And I will say that Ronald L. Banks is a new friend, someone I haven't met before, but someone who I think will have a lot to say and offer a lot of help to the Clean My Space community, because he has such a beautiful approach to life, and he's gone through it. And we've learned that, talking to other folks in the space, particularly in the decluttering and sort of the minimalism space. We chatted with Joshua last week from the Minimalists, and we learned a lot about that last week, and sort of how when you start decluttering small aspects of your life, it just blows up and starts to seep into other parts of your life too. And Ronald has a really interesting path where he had a job and did one thing and then kind of went on this minimalism journey, and it just completely changed the trajectory of his life and who he is and how he thinks about life and approaches everything from shopping to clothes to parenting. So, Ronald, I'm going to bring you in. Welcome to Clean My
Hello.
Space Live.
Thank you for that introduction. That was, that was nice. That was a great
Yeah,
introduction. I'm glad to be here. This is going to be an interesting conversation. I love how you mentioned how I went through this transition in my life from corporate America to minimalism, and how that's impacted the way I think about life, parenting, relationships, everything. So it's really been an encompassing experience. So I'm excited to dive into that.
I actually want to dive into that in just a moment. Before we do that, just a couple of quote unquote housekeeping things up off the top. So first and foremost, let us know in the comments where you are joining us from. It's always fun for us to see where people are tuning in from, and Chad will sometimes put up little bubbles like what you're seeing right now. And we're seeing lots of regular faces here. So hello, everybody. It's really nice to see you all. I'm from Toronto, and Ronald, you are from?
I am from Wisconsin, so I'm about an hour and a half north of Chicago, Illinois.
That's right. Thank you for situating yourself right there on a map for us. And as always, before we get into our live, I'll just let you know if you have any decluttering or minimalism specific questions for Ronald today, please leave those in the comments. Of course, I can always help you, but you know what? We bring on people who are experts in their space. If you have a cleaning question, bring it here. But if you have a decluttering or a minimalism question, I am going to pass that right along to Ronald. You can also shout us out in the comments so I know exactly who you want to answer your question. And we're getting a lot of questions coming up. So Ronald, be prepared. Okay. So at Makers Clean, which is our sister website, makersclean.com or makersclean.ca, if you're here in the north, we have a sale in honor of Mother's Day. We've got our entire bath collection on sale: hair wrap, face cloths, bathrobes, bath sheets, hand towels. They might sell out. These are crazy popular, and we bring them in a slightly lower quantity. Right now, the bathrobes are 50% off, which is ridiculous. The bathrobe is heaven. There's a picture of me wearing it on the website, and I kind of wish I could be wearing it more often than just, when I get out of the shower. Let's be honest. It's very comfortable. Oh yeah, there it is. There it is. Hello. And me wearing the hair wrap. I got to say, not my most flattering photo, but there it is anyway. And the face cloths are just every single, like my friends, my mom, my sister-in-law, is like, everybody is obsessed with these face cloths. So if you're thinking about Mother's Day and what to get, think about that. Anyway, Ronald,
Yes.
Let's get past the Maker's Clean sale, and let's let people know where they can find you. I've got your handle down here at Ronald L. Banks. Is that Instagram?
Yeah, that's everywhere. So there's YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or X, whatever we're calling it now. There's Threads, so the Instagram's version of Twitter.
Are you doing TikTok?
I'm not. No. I have an account. There may be a video or two on there, but I'm not.
Yeah, you've decluttered TikTok from your life. I love that idea.
Yeah. But yeah, just at Ronald L. Banks everywhere on social media, and then my website is ronaldlbanks.com.
Perfect. And so get into it. I want to hear your journey, because I think it is. I mean, I read about your journey, and it's these life-changing things that happen for people. I think it's these moments that we just have to keep hearing, because we have to know when to look out for them ourselves. And sometimes we can be on the path and it can be hard to stay with it. So I want you to share with the audience what your story is.
Yeah. I'll give you a brief version. So I'll go back to when I got hired in corporate America after graduating college. So I graduated at college in 2015. I got hired in my first corporate job in marketing. And the position that I had was very interesting. So I was a 22-year-old kid working in marketing, and I was working on a team that did the NASCAR and IndyCar NHRA sponsorship. So I was traveling to races, being down in the pits.
Fun.
It was very fun, being down in the pits. And then, we have conferences and different meetings. So I'm traveling to different cities for a one-day meeting and then flying back to Wisconsin to come out. So going through that experience as a 22, 23-year-old, traveling to cities I'd never been to on the company's dollar was completely new for me. And, being in these different cities, experiencing different restaurants, different things, it made me think like, okay, you know what? There's got to be more to life than just sitting in the office, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Because it wasn't long after that, maybe 2 years after I was in that position, I got promoted, and then I was no longer traveling. So for me, that was like, I kind of missed that experience of life. What would it be like if I had complete control over my life? That's kind of where that switch happened for me.
Right.
But the minimalism aspect, actually, that came in by accident. So I didn't discover minimalism by watching YouTube videos. I didn't discover it on blog posts. I actually stumbled across it through the people I met in my life. So I've always been very observant. So my younger brother, he is the only person I know who has the same group of friends since grade school. So as we started to get older, I'm like, hold on, there's a reason he's very intentional about his relationships. Maybe I should take some notes from my little brother. And then when I met my wife in 2016, she invited me over to her apartment for dinner. And I was like, wait a minute, you don't have art on your walls. Everything's very curated. She wasn't a minimalist, but everything was very curated. And I'm like, I should take some notes from that. You come to my apartment, I have a red couch, I have a green and blue picture on the wall, and then I got a brown cabinet over here. Everything was all over the place. And then in corporate America, I happened to get to know one of the executives, become good friends with him. We would work out on the weekends together, and come to find out he is a minimalist. And in my eyes, he is the definition of what I think of when I think of minimalism. He had the 7 t-shirts, he had the 1 car. He has what he calls a glass house. So you can see straight through his house, but his home, his dining room table, his kitchen cabinets, the light fixtures on the outside of the home are all the same material. So having conversations with him, having conversations with my wife when we were dating, and then just observing my little brother's life, I said, you know what, there's got to be a different way for me to approach things. And I say, okay, I'm just going to start with my closet, purge everything that I own, and then just kind of let it snowball from there and figure it out as I go.
And how was that experience when you purged your closet? Like, what was that like for you?
Emotional.
Yeah.
The only reason it was emotional for me was because I identified so much of myself with my possessions. I was in this stage in my life where my friend group and everybody that knew me kind of knew me by this personality, by this nickname, and the way I carried myself. So there was a part of me that was trying to maintain that persona. So everything that I had was attaching myself to that.
Mm.
So going through my clothes in the beginning, I had 60 plus pairs of pants. I had over 100 t-shirts. I had 40 or so pairs of shoes. Many of them were brand new, so they had tags on most of the stuff. I was buying it because, trying to maintain this persona. Oh, I got those shoes too. Oh, yeah, I got those jeans. Just trying to, I don't want to say impress people, but it was me clinging to that persona that I could say came with some popularity, that came with being recognized in sports, that came with so many other aspects of life and building relationships. I was like, okay, I want to hold on to that.
Mm.
And then again, getting into corporate America and meeting that executive friend that I have, my wife, my brother, I was like, this got to be a different way. So my first thing was I dropped the nickname and the persona. So previously, my online presence was Ron Smooth Banks or Sincerely Smooth. And then I switched that to Ronald L. Banks. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put myself out there as myself so then I can publicly keep myself accountable to be myself. And then I
Mm.
started with my closet and it went from there.
Wow, that's talk about intentional. That's amazing because nothing keeps you more accountable than putting your full-blown name out there and
Absolutely.
forces you to think about authenticity and being careful and mindful about everything and intentional about everything that you do.
Absolutely.
Um, that's a really great story. And so now you're a dad.
Yes, I'm a dad.
So say more about parenting.
It's a interesting shift. You know, Previously decluttering my life by myself and then doing it alongside my wife, going through that experience together. And then we got pregnant. We said, okay, you know what? How are we going to navigate this? You see the marketing and the ads pushing everything you need for a kid. But I think the very
To make
first thing that
them
we did,
smarter, to make them
yes,
smarter.
right, exactly,
Mhm.
smarter, or to make you a more efficient parent, whatever it is. But I think the first thing that we did is we took a step back from everything when we got pregnant. And we said, you know what do we want? Because we come from a family, my mom shows love through gifts. Her mom shows love through gifts. This is the first grandkid in the family. So we were expecting
Yeah.
everything.
Child.
But our extended family knew how we were living our lifestyle. So it was this interesting conflict between, well, they don't like a lot of stuff, but it's the first grandkid and we want to make sure that the first, you know what I mean? So, but it took some intentional conversations with our family. And it took us exercising restraint and not giving into those marketing advertisements and
Mhm.
the trickery behind everything you need or think you need to be the best parent or a better parent. um, and we found a path that's working for us. Our son doesn't have a lot of stuff. This is his room, actually, right behind me here, where that bright light is. He doesn't have a lot of stuff. He has a toy shelf, so that's also his playroom. We exercise kind of like this zoning idea. We can talk about that a little bit in our home as well. So everything of his is in that room. He knows it stays in that room, and he just does what he wants to do. So it's been an interesting journey, but we're figuring it out.
Yeah, wow. I want to go back to something that you said. How do you exercise restraint when it comes to not being lured in by the promises of very well-crafted marketing, especially when it comes to kids or, fashion or anything like that? How do you exercise restraint? Because I think that's one of the things that folks can struggle with. I know for me, when I'm feeling, particularly vulnerable, it's very easy to be drawn in. I just want to be delighted by something. And so often I'll see an ad and it just looks delightful in that moment. And like it would just soothe my soul. So how do you exercise that restraint?
Yeah, I'm still human. I'm not a robot or a superhero. So I deal with the emotions as well. Um, the fear of missing out. All of those emotions. But for me, the biggest thing that has helped with exercise and restraint is understanding what I value. So early on in my journey, I stumbled across this idea of figuring out your core values. What's important to you? And at the time, I had no idea. I was so clung to that persona that was all I was really trying to maintain, that I had no idea what I valued outside of who this person I was pretending to be was.
Hmm.
So when I got super clear on what my values are, exercise and restraint comes from that. So anytime I'm conflicted with whether or not I want to buy something or whether or not our family wants to do something, we always kind of review our core values, ask ourselves, okay, is this going to align with what the things that we value? Is it going to help us prioritize what we value? Is it going to pull us away from our values? And that has really helped a lot with dealing with that fear of missing out, dealing with the marketing, dealing with the, maybe the judgment from other people with what you
Sure.
have or don't have. Because everything that we have in our home aligns with what we value. So when I get the comments on my YouTube channel, oh, your home seems so empty, seems like a brand new hotel. I get it, but it aligns with our family because one, this is kind of the style that we like, but also we don't value a whole lot of stuff. We'd rather go out and spend time as a family than have a whole bunch of stuff in our home. So that's just kind of how we live our life.
And like, what more could you ask for than for you and your wife to be in alignment with not only each other, but with your family values? Like at that
Absolutely.
point, who cares about the noise?
Absolutely.
It is often said that people who live in value alignment are just the happiest, most fulfilled people. So it sounds to me like you and your family are on the right track. And, at
Absolutely.
such a
And
young
and
age.
I'll tell you this, it was when my experience with corporate America, doing all that traveling, that's when I kind of had that mindset shift where it was, because initially, I'm a young kid, I'm graduated college, got my first job. Initially, I want to climb the corporate ladder. I want to,
Mhm.
be a manager, be an executive, be whatever. And it wasn't long before I switched away from that, climbing the corporate ladder mindset to more of a values focused mindset.
Mhm.
And then I realized, and I was honest with myself, I said, you know what? I don't really enjoy the corporate life. There's nothing
Mhm.
wrong with it, but it's not what I enjoy. And especially when we got pregnant, it pulled me away from my family so much. I was missing so many of the little milestones with my son, and because I'm at work or because I'm traveling or got a meeting. So it was, for me, it was really about, okay, how can I move closer to prioritizing what I value, which is integrity, faith, family, and creativity. Those are my 4 values. So how can I prioritize those things in my life? I know I want to spend time with my family. I want to go out. I want to travel. So a big mindset shift for me was, how can I provide for my family without being stuck at a job Monday through Friday?
Hmm.
And so I went down a path of figuring out what meaningful work meant for me, what, more valuable work meant for me, how I want to make a living for my family. And I went down a path of solopreneurship, growing a YouTube channel, turning that into a business, whatever you want to call it. But it was all about aligning myself with what I cared about and what I valued and ignoring everything else,
Wow.
ignoring what I'm supposed to do when you graduate college.
That requires quite a bit of mental fortitude and guts, but I think it paid off for you.
Yeah.
I want to get into some of the questions because we are getting tons of them. So I'm going to start off with this one from Bubbles Bubbly. And here it goes. What do you do if you're overwhelmed and you don't know where to start? Small apartment, but can't get rid of everything. We just have to buy it again once we're going to buy a home within the next 9 to 12 months.
That's a great question. I'm gonna answer that in 2 parts. So I want to talk about you can't get rid of everything because you fear you're gonna have to buy it again in the future. That is what is called like a fear of the future or a fear of regret. So dealing with that has to be separate than dealing with the stuff itself. Um, for me, what's helped a lot with that is kind of transitioning away from this idea of having a scarcity mindset to a mindset of abundance. And the best way for you to do that in your life is to look at past experiences where you've had some of those abundant moments, where you had more than you needed, or you were in a blessed position, and use that as evidence for yourself to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't really need everything that I'm clinging to, because I don't really have that same fear for the future that I once had, or that regret that I'm going to need something that I once had. So that's a separate thing to deal with outside of the clutter as a whole. But when figuring out where to start, I have my own little process with that. And the best way that I think about this is, you want to take a step back from all the clutter. You want to ignore everything that you're trying to get rid of. And you want to identify the best place for you to start. And the way you find the best place for you to start is, you want to identify a project. And a project is all of the decluttering areas in your home. So you want to identify a decluttering project that sits in the overlap between low effort and high impact. And what I mean by that, low effort are those projects that you can knock out in a weekend, maybe a few hours. It's going to take you no time. If you have a clear action plan, a goal for the space, you can put your playlist on in the background and just knock it out in an hour or two. That's low effort. High impact is the clutter in your life that is creating a noticeable interference or friction in your daily routine. So for me in the very beginning, the place that I started was my bedroom closet. Why? Because it was low effort. I knew that if I just sat down for a weekend, I think I spent an entire Sunday afternoon and I decluttered my entire closet. I'm just gonna sit here and get it done. But it was high impact because every single morning, and this was going back to when I was in high school, I would spend hours upon hours trying to figure out what to wear. Find something, try it on. I don't like that. Spend another few hours trying to find something to wear. There's been moments where I just said, forget it. I'll figure it out in the morning. And now I'm running late to school or running late to work because I'm stressed out about what to put on. So that was high impact for me. The reason you want to start in that overlap is because the low effort is going to help you build momentum quickly and build that decluttering confidence. You know what? I got this done. I feel like I can keep going. That's what that's going to do. But when it also has that overlap into high impact, then you're going to feel and experience the benefits of what owning less can do for you. Because now it's resolving that noticeable friction, that noticeable interference. So for me, when I decluttered my closet, that friction was, oh my God, it takes me forever to get ready in the morning. But when that friction was gone, I have fewer clothes now. I walk in, I can grab anything off the shelf because everything matches everything.
Yeah.
And that eliminates that decision fatigue. It eliminates that friction, that overwhelm. But it was high effort because I was able to build my confidence. So, okay, now let's go through my track stuff. Now let's go through all of my decor. Now let's go through all of the storage stuff. I was able to build that confidence and that momentum because it was easy, but I was able to experience what the real benefits were of having fewer things.
Yeah, that's some really good advice. And I feel I really like the way you say low effort, high impact, and sort of, it's almost like I'm imagining like a graph with like an X and a Y axis, and you're sort of plotting projects on there and kind of picking out which ones have the best rate of return for you. And that's maybe an exciting place to start. Cool. All right. This one's from Jack W42. I literally have hundreds of magazines that I keep around. How can I declutter them?
That's a good question. This reminds me, actually, I helped a lady on my YouTube channel declutter her books. Her name was Pamela. This was maybe 2 years ago now. If you just go to my YouTube channel and search helping my subscribers declutter their space or something like that, you'll find the video. And she had hundreds of books. So the advice I gave her is the same advice I'm going to give you. And the first thing is to pull all those magazines, pull all your books down. And you just want to ask yourself, okay, what have I read? What haven't I read? That's a very simple way to divide everything up. Put everything you read in one pile, put everything you read in another pile. Then go through the piles that you've read and legitimately ask yourself, okay, how do I feel about this book, or how do I feel about this magazine? Did I get something from it? Will I read it again? Will I ever pick it up again? And you have to be brutally honest with yourself here. And this is what I mean by it takes understanding what you value, clarity, honesty with yourself, because we can easily lie and say, you know what, I'm going to read everything, so I'm just going to keep it all. But that's not really the case, because they're sitting there and you've accumulated hundreds of them because they're not being read or used. So it's looking at the things that you've read. Did I get something from this? What have I learned? Do I like this magazine or this book? Will I ever read it again? You take that pile and you divide it. Yes, I'm gonna read that again. Yes, I would, or no, I would not read that again. That's two separate piles once again. Then you move over to the books or the magazines that you haven't read, and you ask yourself the same thing. Will I ever read this? When do I plan on reading it? Does this still align with something I'm interested in? Because maybe you bought it a few months ago or years ago, and you had a certain interest in, but now your interests have changed, and now you're not really going to read that. It's just a part of the collection now. So again, it's being honest with yourself about what you're interested in, what you value, all of that. So divide the things that you haven't read between, okay, am I interested in this? Do I want to read it? And then am I not interested? And is it just part of the collection and taking up space? So once you've divided all of that, then it's just kind of going through that process again and just refining those piles smaller and smaller, and then keeping the items that you are planning to read again or that you want to read in the relatively near future, and then getting rid of everything else. Because you went through this thought process, okay, I got something from it, but I don't need it. I didn't get anything from it, but I don't need it. I got something from it, but I'd love to read it again. This still aligns with my interests, so I'm going to keep it because I plan to read it. If you go through that process, it's going to whittle it down very quickly. And like I said, if you look at that video, the lady that I helped, Pamela, she had hundreds of books. She drastically reduced the number of books she had in a single weekend. I think it was a Saturday. And then she also happened to sell hundreds of books to a half-price bookstore and made a few dollars as well, which is awesome. Yeah. So she had maybe 5 bookshelves and different totes, and now she has maybe 3 shelves of books, and that's it. And it really aligns with her values because she's an avid reader and she kept the books that she wants to read. So that's my advice in terms of the magazines. Just treat it the same way you would treat those books.
I like that advice. One of one of the things I know I've dealt with in the past with magazines is like keeping sounds so silly, but like keeping them for projects. Like if I
Mm,
ever wanted to, use them for something a little crafty, like making a collage or something like that. But in the past, when I've done that, it's not like I go through 20 magazines. Like you probably need 5. And it can just be so easy to go down the spiral. So I totally agree with you. And the other thing I'll say about books is oh my God, every time I buy a book, I'm like, so I'm done with the book. I'm never gonna, unless it's a reference book, like Clean
mhm.
My Space, which is a reference book, unless it's a reference book, or like a cookbook. I'm never gonna look at that book again. It's not like I go back and, read my favorite chapter. Audiobooks have been something that I've been more interested in lately, as well as like just digital downloads. So even like our public library has a really great app where you can take out, I don't have an e-reader, but a lot of my friends love e-readers. You can take out books for e-readers. You can, download audiobooks and listen to those, which is what I like to do. And I found like that's been a nice way to cut down on clutter and save money on books. And we've got a nice piece of advice there about donating them as well.
Yes.
Okay, here's another one. This is from Baku Express. Where can I donate old blankets and pillows?
Oh, that's a good question. Again, it depends on your values. You can keep it simple and go to Goodwill or your local donation center like that, or you can look at kind of animal shelters and things like that. They may take the old blankets and pillows for the dogs and the cats and different animals there. So again, it depends on your values. Are you kind of a sentimental person, care about the animals and want to support that, or do you just want to get rid of the stuff and give it to Goodwill and you don't care that they're going to sell it? It really just depends on your values, but those are the kind of the two extremes. You can go to Goodwill route, or you can go to kind of the animal shelter, homeless center route as well.
Yeah, both great pieces of advice. And that's whenever we have old towels or blankets, that's we
Hmm.
we donate them to animal shelters. Okay, Catherine Eddy, going into this cleaning industry, where to start shopping wise? Do you bring stuff you already have? And if you're doing it for the first time, do you start small? Okay, I'll take this one, Ronald, since I imagine you don't have experience starting a cleaning business.
No.
All right. So, Catherine, when I started Clean My Space back in 2006, I made a list of cleaning tools and products that I would need. And I put those in the trunk of my car. I brought them because I wanted to have control over what I was using because it's what I was familiar with and what I trusted. But you always need like sort of a plan B and a plan C. Plan B if the product that you like isn't safe for the finish that your client has. Plan C, sort of if you need something that's a little bit more heavy duty, or on the opposite side, if your client has allergies or a pet or some serious sensitivities, you need something that's still going to work but is super, safe. So you're going to start with your Goldilocks products, and then you're going to have a tier or two up and a tier or two down. And you can build out your kit as you go. You don't need everything all at once. Now what we do is we sell products to clients, or we give them a shopping list of what we would like them to have, and we use what they have at home. We try to reduce our carbon footprint. So we take transit, which is not the way I would say 95% of cleaning services operate. They all have their own fleet of vehicles. That's not how we do it for whatever reason. So we use what our clients have at home, and we kind of educate them on what we like them to have there so that we can do our jobs well. Not all people like that. And in fact, we lose some clients that way. They're, people who inquire, they're just not interested. They want us to bring everything, and that's fine. I also find it's more sanitary when, you go to do a cleaning at someone's house and you're just using their products and tools instead of like the scrub brush and the sponge that was used at house A this morning and now it's at house B. Like, I don't know. I find that gross. Especially during COVID times, I feel like it really started to resonate where people were like, ew, I don't want that cross contamination. Thank you. So anyway, I hope that is answering your question there, Catherine. And yes, start small. Just start where you are, do what you can, and build as you go. Sing It has an interesting question for you, Ronald, and that is, how did the pandemic affect your decluttering personally and professionally?
That's interesting. I haven't gotten that question before. Well, I started my journey well before the pandemic happened. So I was in a little bit of a different position. So my physical life, my physical environment was pretty much completely decluttered before the pandemic happened. Um, and then I also paid off all of my debt. So I was already in a position where I wasn't really stressed about clutter or finances or stuff like that during the pandemic. But I guess reflecting on that experience, if I was still heavily decluttering during the pandemic, I would say that the biggest shift that I would have had was just realizing how much stuff I've accumulated or that was taking up space in my home because I was in my home every single day. Often what happens is when we get kind of sucked into our regular routine, you wake up at this time, you leave the house, you come back home at this time, you have dinner, you go to bed. We don't really notice everything that is in our home. We don't really interact with everything at one time. But the pandemic, I think, really surprised a lot of people because we're stuck at home. You're interacting with your home more than usual. And you realize how much stuff you've tried to hide in this closet or put on that shelf or stuff in this box. And, I think that really overwhelmed a lot of people and, trying to figure out, okay, how can I navigate this? Because now I realize I really do have a lot of stuff. But like I said, for me, my experience was I was already well past the bulk of my clutter before that happened. So for me, during the pandemic, it was just refining the little things. Okay, maybe I really don't need that because I'm not going to the office for the next 2 years. And then when I do go back to the office, I'll tell you this, my experience with that, now that I think about this, with clothes. So pre-pandemic, I had kind of more corporate business casual clothing that I would kind of cycle through. But going through the pandemic experience, I kind of had an epiphany. Well, maybe I don't really need all of these corporate clothes and all that type of stuff. So when the pandemic was ended, for the last, what was it, maybe 3 years since the pandemic's been over, I wore the khakis. I had 3 or 4 polos that I rotated through. And then I had a kind of like a gray zip up hoodie. And I wore that every single day, Monday through Friday, unless I was required to wear a suit or something a little more formal because I was going to, be with the high ups for whatever reason. But I wore that every single day. And at first I was a little worried that, maybe people are going to judge me. They're going to think I'm dirty. I don't have a lot of clothes, yada, yada, yada. But I didn't care. At that point, I was like, you know what? I'm tired of stressing about clothing. I'm tired of stressing about getting dressed in the morning. I'm going to grab these pair of khakis. I'm going to grab maybe 4 or 5 different shades of blue for a polo and call it a day. And I wore that for 3 years straight, Monday through Friday, without hesitation. And I didn't care one bit.
That's that's a great story. And so many people, myself included, had a really hard time during the pandemic. And I just wonder, do you think that having less at home and sort of doing, figuring out your values and doing all of that in advance, not that we can ever plan for this, but having already done it, going into the pandemic, do you feel that that was a contributing factor to you being able to get through the pandemic?
Absolutely, because I already knew what was important to me and what I wanted, what was important to my family. Like I said, it was just my wife and I at the time. We didn't have our son then. So, we didn't have to deal with the kids and the excess and trying to keep them entertained when we can't leave the house. So that's a different kind of beast to tackle if you had kids during the pandemic. But for us, understanding what's important to you, those core values, really brings a lot of clarity to your life in terms of what you want to keep, what you need, what you have to get rid of. Yeah, I have a decision formula on my website. If you go to ronaldbanks.com/decisions, and there are 7 questions that I like to ask myself whenever I'm kind of stumbled by something. And the very first question in that formula is, overall, will this decision pull me close to my core values or pull me away from it? So if it's going to hinder me from prioritizing things that I care about, then I don't want to have anything to do with it. And that's made making decisions very simple and very clear because I'm not conflicting with other people's opinions. I'm not conflicting with being judged by outside people. It's just, this helps me prioritize what I care about, so I'm going to keep it, or it doesn't, so I'm going to get rid of it. Very simple.
That's a pretty zoomed out question. So are the subsequent questions, do they get tighter and tighter?
Yeah, absolutely. So the questions, let me see if I pull it up here.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the other 6, because that's
Okay,
That's
so
a cool formula.
it's 7 steps. So the steps, first step 1 is values, and then it's impact,
Mhm.
effort, and then gut check, knowledge check, and then it's kind of a vision. So the overall vision you have for your life. And then the last part is kind of to score it out. So it's a bit of a scoring, kind of a
Hmm.
gamify effect. So like I said, so the first question is just, will this help me prioritize my values or push me away from my values? And you will rank your answer to that question on a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 means I'm completely disconnected from my values, and then 5 means I'm completely aligned. This is really going to help me prioritize the things I care about. And then the impact, you want to ask yourself, okay, is this going to have a positive impact on my life? Because oftentimes what we do is we make decisions without really thinking through the long-term impact that it's going to have on us or the people in our life, our family, our kids. We're kind of very rational with it. I got to make a decision now. So I'll just do this. And we don't really think through it. So if you take some time, just think about the impact. And again, the scale 1 to 5, 1 means very little impact on my life. And then 5 means it's going to have a huge impact on my life. And then we move to step 3. Step 3 is all about effort. So you want to ask yourself, okay, how much effort and time is this going to require? So that could be in terms of decluttering. It could be in terms of, changing your job. It could be in terms of whatever decision you're trying to make. But you're asking yourself, hey, what is the effort? How much effort and time I'm going to have to put into making this decision or managing the outcome of the decision that I make, thinking through all of that. So again, 1 on that scale means it's going to take a ton of work. And then 5 means it's going to take almost no work. So if you're talking about decluttering, if you're looking at, okay, maybe you're out shopping and say, okay, I want to buy this thing for my home. Okay, well, how much effort is that going to take for me to manage that on top of everything else?
Well,
If
if
it's a
it's from
candle, it's going
IKEA,
to
it would
be
be an 11 out of 10 anyway.
right. So like I said, when you think through these questions in terms of what you're doing, you kind of really massage the way you think about the question to your situation. It really changes the way you think about it. Step 4 is a gut check. So you're just asking yourself, am I emotionally at peace with this decision?
Mm,
Again, it kind of goes back to the idea of making very rational decisions or irrational decisions. And we're not really thinking through it. We're not really thinking about the impact of that decision.
yep.
We just want to make a decision so we don't have to worry about it for the rest of the day or the rest of the month. And for me, when I decided to quit my corporate job, this was the biggest question that I was hung up on because I quit my corporate job this past October to bet on myself full time.
Wow.
But 2 years prior to that, right before we got pregnant, I was on the phone with my manager. This was right at the end of the pandemic. And I say, hey, you know what? I don't think I'm going to come back. And I'm in tears. I'm going through the whole shebang. And he was like, you know what? Just sleep on it. And I was like, okay, I slept on it. And I woke up the next morning. I said, you know what? I'm going to stay for a little bit longer. And that's because I wasn't emotionally at peace with the decision. Now, luckily, I had a
Mm,
manager who wasn't kind of going to fire me because I decided to quit and then decided to stay. So that was a
yeah.
blessing. But for me, it was really about being emotionally at peace with that decision. So anything that you're contemplating in your life, you have to be emotionally at peace with that decision, not your parents, not your wife, not your kids, not whoever else, your best friend. It's you because it's going to impact you in your life.
And let me just interject here, like
Yeah,
for the people who are listening, I want you to know, like, we could be talking about a book, but you can see how Ronald's using the same approach to talk about a major life change, like leaving a job, which is, I did that as well, albeit I was way younger and much less was at stake. But, these are huge, impactful life choices, and they're not to be taken lightly. And what you're showing is that building the muscle and doing the work when it comes to, say, where you started decluttering a closet helps you learn how to make these bigger changes, shifts, and decisions in your life down the road. And you can apply this tool across the board. Anyway, carry on.
absolutely. Absolutely. So step 5 is a knowledge check. So that is to ask yourself, do I have enough information to make a sound and informed decision? And the key word there is enough, because
Mm,
oftentimes we get hung up in this where I have to know every single thing before I
mhm.
make a decision, or it's the opposite extreme. I'm just going to decide something so I don't have to deal with it tomorrow. You want to make sure you have enough information, and enough is for where you're comfortable. So again, when I quit my corporate job, did I have enough information? Okay, how am I going to make an income? What I'm going to do with my 401k? What am I going to do with my pension? How am I going to have a retirement account since I no longer have the corporate sponsored 401k? All of these different, what I'm going to do about health insurance, all of these different decisions. And I want to make sure that I had enough information to make sure that, again, that I was emotionally at peace because I knew enough to get the job done. I knew that I could figure things out as I went, but I didn't want to jump into this completely blind, have a kid, have a wife, no health insurance, no savings plan, no income plan. I didn't want to have any of that. So that knowledge check along with the gut check was very huge for me. And then step 6 is your vision. So you're going to ask yourself, how close of a fit is this decision with the vision I have for my life? So again, that last question kind of brings us the loop full circle back to your core values. So when you understand what you value, you kind of have this vision for your life, the where you want to head. So I want to prioritize these things. Here's how I see my life going forward. For me, like I said, it's integrity, faith, family, and creativity. Quitting my corporate job allowed me to prioritize my family more, allowed me to prioritize my creativity more. Integrity is all about being myself. So like I said, I changed my name to Ronald L. Banks. I'm being more myself in my personal life, my online presence, having that integrity across everything that I do. But it's also the integrity in my business and how I monetize my business, the information that I give. I'm not trying to be sleazy or lie to people. It's across the whole board. So that visions question is really going to help you kind of think about how you can put your core values into practice daily. And then the scale on that one is, again, 1 to 5. 1 means it's not close to the vision I have in my life, and 5 is very close. And then the scoring aspect, you just want to look at all of those, sum up all of those scores that you answered for the first 6 questions, and then divide by 6. And then that final number is going to kind of give you a range for where you are in terms of making the best decision for yourself. And if it's closer to 1, that means you need to take some more time to consider that decision before you decide. And if it's a 5, that means you got everything you need to do. Go ahead, strongly consider that decision. Now, we'll say that final score is not meant to make the decision for you. Don't rely on that as your decision, that final factor. It's just to help inform you, so that way you kind of have that emotional piece, that knowledge check, that, okay, you know what, I can settle into this and know if I do make the decision, I got everything I need. Or if I take a little bit more time, I know why I'm taking a little bit more time. It just brings that clarity to the entire thing. So that way, when someone has a question for you, why'd you quit your job when you got a family and a kid under 2? Well, here's why I quit my job. Here's what my plan is going forward. I had that clarity because I took the time to work through this rather
Yeah.
than jumping ship when everyone told me, oh, your YouTube channel is blowing up, you should just quit right away. Nah, I'm not at
Yeah,
peace with that.
I can see that. Like, you're absolutely unflappable in your stance. Like, you're so clear on your decision. And something I want to just ask you about is exploring and making more time for your creativity. So I mean, family, faith, integrity, we've sort of covered that. I mean, faith, I can put 2 and 2 together on that one. But I would love to know, from a creativity standpoint, what does that look like for you? Because I think, and I'll tell you why I asked this, I think looking back on your story, you were so focused on your corporate job. And so many folks deal with this, where you almost feel like a slave to your job and you don't have the time to do the things you love or the things you wish you had time for. So what did that part of your journey look like for you? And how do you express and outlet your creativity?
Yeah. So I've always been a poet. So I started writing poetry when I was, I want to say maybe high school-ish, is when
Wow.
my parents suggested that I started journaling, and then that kind of morphed itself into poetry when I got to college.
Wow.
So a big outlet for me before I started really sharing my thoughts on YouTube was just writing my poetry. And I would go to open mic events here in Milwaukee and Wisconsin. I hosted my own open mic event down in Illinois for maybe a year and a half.
Wow.
So poetry for me has been kind of that written expression. And what a lot of people don't see behind the scenes when it comes to my videos and the way I express things, because I often get comments about, oh, you sound so poetic, or I love the way you explained that, I love that metaphor. That comes from my poetic background. And often what people don't see is a lot of my videos come from things that I either sit down and write. So I may have an idea, okay, how can you declutter, your home if you're a messy person? I think through that process, okay, what are the steps? But then I think about how I can tie that message into something that may be a little more relatable for the general public, or something that you can easily recognize, or a metaphor, like I said, a metaphor, a simile, something that I can connect it to. So that way you can say, I never thought about it like that before. That's where the poetry comes from for me. So creativity for me is just expressing myself through that poetic language, and then how that connects itself to the videos I create. Or, I've been getting into photography a little bit. So how I think about the photos I take, it kind of morphs itself into everything. But it all stemmed from me having that poetic background and expressing myself through poetry.
That's so nice. That is so nice. And the way that you bring your creativity into your work and your work into your creativity, like just giving yourself that time to explore and expand that area. It just
And I'll tell you this, I'll give you an example, because I
lovely.
mentioned my YouTube channel in poetry. There's a video that I did a few years back. I think the video is titled "Why You Feel Behind in Life,"
Mm.
or "In Case You Feel Behind in Life." And the way I started that video was very unique in my opinion. And I started the video by talking about the childhood story of the tortoise and the hare. And I
Hmm.
mentioned how in life, we're moving through life like the hare. We want to be quick. We want to be fast. We want to get to the finish line. But we're sitting here thinking like the tortoise. And because our mind is moving a lot slower than we want life to move, we feel like we're behind. But what we have to do is we have to flip flop and start moving through life more like the tortoise rather than like the hare. Because
Hmm.
at the end of the story, the tortoise wins at the end of the day. But
Right.
I use that metaphor to kind of bring home the idea that it's about running your own race at your own pace, and then here are the steps to walk through that. So I try to
Hmm.
use things like that whenever I can to just bring a what seems like a intimidating thought or intimidating idea, bring that down to something that everyone can relate to or that we all remember from when we were kids. It's like, oh, I remember that. I love reading that story. Or I did another one when I talked about childhood games and red light, green light, or Simon
Mm.
Says, and I use metaphors for these different games we played as kids. And I said, okay, well, you know what? How about we start embracing more red light moments in life?
Hmm.
Again, using that as a metaphor to just slow down rather than telling you, slow down, listen to me. I might be younger than you, but slow down. It's like,
Hmm.
no, what's your favorite game from when you was a kid? Mine was red light, green light. I loved running very fast. But I've learned throughout life to embrace more red light moment in life. Now you can start thinking about your own life and say, okay, you know what? He's right. I've been going way too fast. Or my favorite childhood game was capture the flag. And here's how that applies to my life. It really changes the way you think about things,
Hmm.
in my opinion, when I try to use metaphors like that to help you navigate some of those larger decisions or
Hmm.
larger parts of life.
This is such an interesting discussion. I can see so many people are getting so much out of it, and I think that's part of the value of giving Ronald's newsletter a follow and his YouTube channel a follow. Like it's a really nice fresh perspective. I want to get to a question from Belle Riot, who is a Clean My Space producer. So hello and thank you. Here's your question. Do you have advice on decluttering spare wires, Ethernet cables, USB cords, etc.? My partner doesn't want to throw some out, even though the wires are broken and we don't need all of them.
That's interesting. I think this is going to have to be a firm reality check and just asking yourself kind of, we're really just starting with your needs. So what wires and cables am I using on a regular basis or semi-regular basis? Whether you're a creator, you have cameras, or you're a gamer and you have PCs and different laptop setups, whatever the case is, what cables and wires am I consistently using on a regular basis? And then it's just being firm and honest with yourself. Well, this is damaged, so I can't use it anyway, throw it away. Or I already have 3 USB-C cables, I don't need a fourth one. It's just having that firm and honest conversation with yourself. But I will say, to go a level beyond that, because you mentioned that this is your partner's things. I will say that there has to be a certain aspect, and this is something that my wife and I have navigated. There has to be a certain aspect where you allow your partner to just be your partner.
Hmm.
And you fell in love with them for a reason, you love them for a reason, but everyone's not going to change at the same pace that you change. So it's really about taking a step back and modeling the behavior. So maybe it's getting rid of some of the extra stuff that you have. And it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe I don't need those cables. She's kind of inspiring and motivating me to get rid of my cables. But it's also, again, I think when you think about the organizing side of things, if we go a step beyond that further, it's giving your partner a space in the home. Maybe it's a cabinet or a shelf, to just let them be them. If he wants to have
Hmm.
100 cables, he can have 100 cables in this one spot, and that's it. So it's different layers to this. So it's having that firm and honest conversation, but then it's also about, okay, you know what? Well, this is my partner. I love them for them. Let me just model the behavior that I want them to pick up on, and then at the same time allow them to be themselves and kind of grow at their own pace by
Hmm.
watching what I'm doing.
I think that's such a clever solution. Like, just give them their own space to be who they are. And it's completely a judgment free zone and it's their business. I love that.
Absolutely.
I want to ask, because we have a couple questions here I want to cover off before we have to wrap things up. So here's one from Roos Carton 123. And it goes, how can I declutter all of the stuff I have in my kitchen, like small appliances, tools, utensils, bowls, cups, etc.?
That's a good question also. I'm probably going to give you a perspective on this that you haven't heard already. And I'm going to say that you have to um, take a look at your fantasy self. So again, what often happens is and this is pulling from my experience with that persona that I had, that personality that I clung to, but we oftentimes have this fantasy self version of ourselves where we're, for example, your kitchen, where you have this idea where you're going to
Bake
have
a
a
3-tier
4-course
cake.
meal and yeah, have a 4 or 5-course meal every Sunday and have the family come over, and you feel like you have to have the KitchenAid mixer and all these different appliances. But the reality is that you cook maybe twice a week and your meals are very simple and you mix it by hand instead of using a mixer. So it's kind of stepping back and asking yourself again, it's getting clarity on who you are, those core values again, and detaching yourself from that fantasy self version of you and saying, okay, well, how do I really use my kitchen? How does my kitchen function in my life? And do I have a need for multiple spatulas at different angles and different textures because I cook these different meals, or do I not?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at my kitchen, we have the KitchenAid mixer, we have some of those larger appliances. That's because we cook most of our meals from scratch. We have fun doing that. My wife made homemade pot pies a couple weeks ago, and she made the little biscuit and the whole little thing. So we have ramekins,
Can you
right? So
use
we
that
have all
for
these little
me?
things, but someone else may not cook like that, so they don't need all of that stuff. So it's again those core values and getting clarity on the role you want your kitchen to play in your life. If you think about it like that, how do I want my kitchen to function in my everyday life? And then what do I need to align with that? You may not need as much as you think you do. And I will say that enough is always less than you think it is.
Oh, that feels like something that could go on a pillow
Yeah,
that you
it
don't
could,
declutter,
right?
that you don't declutter, or a napkin. Yeah, Carol, exactly.
Yeah,
Homemade pot pies, like Ronald, new business idea. You
absolutely.
guys make the pot pies, you ship them. I will order some. Huge fan of the pot pie. Okay. We have a question here from A Sense Common. Why does it feel like I have a closet full of clothes, but I can't ever find anything to wear?
I think again that kind of goes back to the idea of realizing that your reality may have shifted. So you may have purchased a lot of those clothes back when you had a certain style or you loved a certain pattern or a certain color. And sometimes we get so caught up in the everyday routine of life that we don't realize that our interests have shifted and changed, but our environment isn't shifting with that. And that's what happened with me. That's why I ended up with over 100 t-shirts and 60 plus pairs of pants, because my
Mm.
style has evolved over the years. I would buy things and then never wear it. But as I grew, from high school to college to corporate America, my maturity has changed, my style has changed, my environment never changed along with that. I was so caught up in the everyday cycle. So it's taking that step back, and it's starting with your needs. So what do you wear every single day? You probably gravitate towards the same 3 t-shirts every Saturday. Well, keep those 3 t-shirts and everything else is up for debate. You probably wear the same pair of jeans every time you go out with your girlfriends or your homeboys. Okay, keep that pair of jeans. Everything else is up for debate. When you think about it like that,
Called the
and
uniform.
yes, the uniform, but if you think about it like that and just, okay, what does my reality look like? What am I wearing every single day? What do I enjoy? What patterns, what colors do I love? Think about it from that perspective. Keep the things that you gravitate towards naturally, because we all have that. I wear this t-shirt almost every day, so I keep this t-shirt. When you look at it from that perspective, and then everything outside of what you naturally gravitate towards is considered clutter until it's proven otherwise. So all of the other clothes, it's clutter until you find a reason to keep it. That doesn't mean create a reason to keep it, but it's asking yourself genuinely, okay, do I wear this? When do I wear it? Do I need it? Do I not need it? I'll tell you this. I have 9 t-shirts and 2 pairs of jeans. I have some chinos and things like that for a little more formal events. My wife has 7 t-shirts and 4 pair of jeans. And then we have all the little basics that go along with that, the overlayers and all the stuff like that. But for us, it's okay. We gravitate towards the same t-shirt every time we do this. We gravitate towards the same pair of jeans every time we do that. We love to work out. So she has leggings. I have a pair of running pants and shorts. That's what we have. So again, getting clarity on the life that you live, the vision you have for your life, what do you naturally gravitate towards? And then everything else is up for debate after that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. A lot of
I love
people are
that. Yep.
just
Clutter until proven otherwise. Think about it from like the when you're in court and they say you're innocent until proven guilty. It's kind of where that came from. Everything else outside of what you use daily is clutter until proven otherwise. And that doesn't mean create a reason. It means, is there a reason or not? And if there's not, you have to be honest about that.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's like, again, like just these nuggets and being able to pull them out of the conversation are so helpful, because sometimes it's just one line that can change someone's life completely. You know, they hear something, and I heard something the other day listening to a Brene Brown podcast, and it has just sat with me, and it's something that I think I will remember for a very, very long time, and I'll share it. And I'll share it because I just want to encourage you to keep sharing the nuggets that you've been dropping here today that have been so meaningful and useful. And what she said was, you're either a learn-it-all or a know-it-all. And I mean,
That's good. That's
what an
good.
amazing quote,
Yeah,
just
that's really
to have
good.
sitting in your mind, right? Just to have that beginner's mindset all the time and not be the smartest person in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love the way that you answered that question. And I think admittedly, like one of the big turnoffs when I see minimalists is, like, I don't want to wear the same thing every day. Like I actually really enjoy, you know, the struggle of so many nuggets. I realize maybe nuggets not the right word to use, so I do apologize, folks. I think we know what kind of nugget I was talking about. Okay. All right. Um, anyway, back with the nugget talk. But what I was saying, you know, I really like choosing my outfit, even though
Mm-hmm.
you talked about the struggle earlier on. Not that I enjoy pain, but I do enjoy the struggle of putting an outfit together and having different things to wear. But at the same time, it is burdensome when you
Mm-hmm.
think about, I just did a big closet changeover yesterday because it all of a sudden went from being winter to summer. Like in the morning, it's winter, in the summer, in the afternoon, it's summer. So I have to now change my closet over. I was sweating in my car.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized is, like, you know, I go through and I do this huge change out, and there's so many clothes, and I'm spending all this money, and then I'm getting rid of this thing that I don't like anymore and thinking about replacing this thing. And it's expensive and it's consuming. And if we're talking about values, I value that, but not everyone has to value that.
Exactly. I was just going to
And
say that again, it goes back to those values, but
yeah.
it's also about when I mentioned finding the best place to start, and I talked about that high impact in the place that's creating friction and interference in your life. If getting dressed in the morning doesn't create friction or interference for you, then maybe your closet isn't an issue. The clutter, maybe your closet isn't cluttered. Maybe it just needs to be better organized, better, you know, maybe you got to find pieces that work together a little bit better. So it's
Yeah.
really, again, it's getting clarity on the type of life you want to live. What do you value? You know, I wear black, but my wife doesn't wear black every single day, but she has 7 t-shirts, you know,
Yeah.
so it just depends on what do you want to do, and
You're
that
such a
clarity has to matter.
minimalist. They all wear black. Yeah.
No, I will tell you this though. I would say I do have other colors, but I'll tell you this, because everything that I think about, I try to do very intentionally. The reason I wear a lot of black now, I talked about the decision fatigue when I decluttered my closet and trying to just get rid of that completely. But also a big part of it for me was trying to find a very basic thing that I could wear every day until I figure out what I enjoy wearing. So I really figure out my
Mhm.
style. I don't want to be buying a whole bunch of stuff and figuring
Mhm.
things out. I'm going to just kind of observe, watch some creators that I love the way they dress, and figure out what style I vibe with. And until I figure that out, I have a blue t-shirt, I have blue jeans. You can see that here, and I keep it very simple.
Love that. I do want to point out that Bellwright gifted us 10 memberships on YouTube, which is incredibly generous. So thank you
Awesome.
so much. That's so nice. We recently started this membership program on YouTube. Like everything that we do is always going to be free. It's just a way that our audience can offer additional support if they so choose for the work that we do. And honestly, that means so much. Like, thank you. That is really kind and lovely. So I just want to say that. And and for everyone who, you know, who's struggling, I hope you, I'm going to say it again. I hope you picked up some good nuggets today. Um, Ronald, tell us where we can find you, because I think you've got yourself a new legion of fans
Oh,
here.
that'd be
So
awesome.
tell
But
us
really
where we
quick,
can find
before I share that, I do
you.
want to leave another nugget because
Yeah.
I enjoy doing that. Um, when you think about questions to ask yourself when you're decluttering, because I know there are tons of questions out there and it can get very confusing, very overwhelming. Two questions that I've really gravitated towards that kind of really help me think about things differently. The first question is, if I lost this item, would I actively be trying to search it or replace it? Search for it or
Mm,
replace it? And then the second question is, if someone offered me money for this, would I part with it? And because what we don't often consider is that the money factor matters when it comes to our stuff. We're human at the end of the day. But if you use those two questions just to think about your stuff from a different perspective, of course, I'll sell this water bottle if somebody want to give me $5, but I use this water bottle, so I'm not going to sell it. There has to be some logic behind answering these questions, but when you think about it, okay, if I lost this, would I actively be trying to search for to replace it? And if someone offered me money, would I be willing to part with it? If you look at some of those items that you get stuck on from that perspective, you might surprise yourself with how you answer those questions and whether or not you need to keep that thing in your life. That's just another nugget. But yeah, where you can find me, like I said, at Ronald L. Banks, everywhere, YouTube, Instagram, X, or Twitter. My website's ronaldlbanks.com. My newsletter is ronaldlbanks.com/newsletter. My newsletter is called The Clarity Club. So I'm kind of helping people move from that less clutter to more clarity across life, work, family, everything. And then I have a decluttering course as well that is launching on May 29th. I'm kind of rebuilding that course to make it a little bit more robust and bigger than what it was before. So that's relaunching on the 29th. And there's an interest list with probably 200 people on that now. So if you're interested, you can find that from my newsletter as well.
Sounds great. And I hope you go and you check out Ronald's work and you give him a follow. It was a pleasure having you on today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And to everyone who watched, I hope you got inspired in some way, shape, or form, and that your weekend is just a little bit or a lot better for tuning in today. And on that note, have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you soon. Take good care.